to the devotees who took trouble today to put up a very simple but very important lesson for us, which is a very famous story in all our sastras, and which highlights to us the Lord's mercy. So I'm going to call their names out, and I hope that all of you can give them a warm round of applause and gratitude. Like we said, all these devotees are students. They work very hard to get all their work done normally, and apart from all that, they have taken the time and trouble today to put up a skit so that the audience can be entertained, at the same time come to understand a simple truth, but in a very, very simple and sweet manner. So first of all, I want you to put your hands together for the part of Srinivas. Kavita. Kavita is doing a PhD in biological studies. That's it? Yes. Okay, now we have the part of Lakshmi. We have Madhuri. Madhuri is also doing a PhD in biological sciences. Okay, so now we have, did you all find the little boys, Balram and Krishna? Of course, they're not too little, they're all adults, you know. But I think they gave a sweetness which is very much, very innocent. So put your hands together to first welcome Balram, Krishna. From the day I met Rishi, the one thing I always like is that she never stops smiling. And it's very evident today also. So thank you very much, Rishi. She's a PhD in life sciences. And last but not least, Krishna today is Kartika. Kartika is a research associate in computer science. Degrees in the end don't matter when we are at the deathbed. But why we speak them is because we appreciate the fact that they are very much in this material world, doing their duties, studying, balanced, and yet they have all the qualities of devotees. And that is becoming more and more rare in today's world. So thank you very much. I've got two over here. Who's the director? She's not here. She's Los Angeles, and who else? So is she here? Okay, can we call one of the directors? Venki Mataji, is she here? Can she come out? Yes. Thank you very much.
So once again, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. So we have wonderful drama by our colleagues and our fellow graduate friends. I think we learned a bit from there. And now we are going to enter the second part of our program. That is more exciting. I think we are going to happen more exciting part. And we are going to hear from a very great person, I think, and very good speaker. We attend almost quite lot topic from him, and we always be happy after hearing him. So that's thing we can say. I think those people are here already heard from him. They are already chirping there. I think I can saw their face is already growing. They are going to hear from him. And those are the new people. I think I promise you guys you're going to be happy after hearing from him. So Devakinandan Prabhu, this is he's not such. You're not a real learner, right? By given name is not the Devakinandan. Yes, okay. So he's I'm happy to inform all of you that he's a NUS alumni. Back then days, he's a student like us, study here. So he's a lawyer by profession, a very good lawyer in Singapore. He can handle so many cases, typical cases, but when he speaks, it feels us like here in home. So he's such a person. And tonight he's going to speak about the topic here, Dev Terminator. I don't know so much about it. It's a very hard topic, but he's going to present such a way we can take him some message from that. So please welcome Devakinandan Prabhu for his life. Yes.
want to thank all of you for having joined me today. If I speak at this volume, can you hear me right at the back? That's good. Are all of you on holidays, so to speak? Is there a vacation period? Not at all. It's okay. So it's very good to see so many of you come together, take the time and trouble to join us here. I was in NUS from 1991 to 1995, 96. So it's been a long time since I was here. And I was just thinking as I was driving to come to LT3 today, that I used to park illegally at the back of the lecture theatres. There used to be a road coming through King Edward Hall. We used to keep our cars there because it was the easiest way to jump through, come to LT3, and either go to the Faculty of Law or go down to YIH. The last time I tried it today, I found that road doesn't even exist in the same form it used to before. So it has been a while. It has been a while. I studied law here for 4 years, and I graduated from here. And then I've gone on to practice in law school. I went on to practice. I started my own firm, and it's been about 16 years since I've been in practice. But what I really enjoy is coming back to speak to all of you whenever I can, because not only does it bring me memories of being a student, but it also gives me good purpose that we are here speaking about a topic or topics which are extremely important for our life. So what I intend to do today is to actually speak on a topic which actually doesn't make you smile so much as he first described you to me. It is quite a serious topic in one sense, but at the same time it's a very important topic. The title of the topic was not given by me, it's actually given by Sri Ram Gopal Prabhu. I just take the topics and I try and see if I can find something from the scriptures to make us understand different areas of life and different ways in which we can make spiritual values part of our everyday life. That's the key. Bhagavad Gita is nice. Bhagavatam is also very nice. But to everyone else, and to the common man on the street, to those who don't have an inclination to spiritual life, the question can always arise, of what value are these scriptures if I cannot apply them on a daily basis? If I cannot use them when I'm studying, if I cannot make sense of them when I'm working, if they cannot help me when I'm in family life, or if they cannot help me, most important of all, when I'm in difficulty and in trouble, then what is the value of scriptures? So, with that in mind, there is a topic that we speak about, which I think is very important to all of us, and that is the topic of death. And the title of this presentation is actually a personality who actually terminated death. And in this material world, that's a little bit of a contradiction, because death actually terminates everything. And frankly speaking, nobody gets to terminate death. So if that is the case, the question we ask ourselves is there such a possibility that death can cease affecting us or even overtaking us? With that in mind, I wanted to ask one or a few questions which will be very helpful for all of us. The first, of course, is, I'm not blocking all of you, am I? If I were to stand, or would you prefer me to sit? What's better? You can sign. Okay, because if I sit, you may not see me, and I can't see you. Every day, someone is dying somewhere. Is it not true? And every day, those who are alive, they actually think that they can live forever. This is the answer that Yudhishthira Maharaj gave years ago at the point of the Mahabharata war. There was a famous Yaksha, actually he is Yamaraj. The Lord of Death asked Yudhishthira, who is a very famous character from Mahabharata, who was a great warrior and was considered a great king in those times. He asked him a question. He said, what is the most wonderful thing that you have witnessed in this world? And Yudhishthira Maharaj replied that every day someone is dying, and yet those who are alive, they genuinely believe that they will live forever. it is so much embedded in our lives when we see others die, that never does it strike us immediately that my turn could very well be next. And that, Krishna Maharaj said, is the most wonderful thing in this world. Because death occurs at all times. So Bhagavatam and our scriptures tell us, this is the inexplicable power of death. It is unseen, it is unheard, at least until the time when it snatches us. And when it snatches us, not only does it snatch away the happiness that we think we have a right to in this life, but worse than that, sometimes death takes away those whom we cherish and those whom we love. So death is not exactly a friend of this world. But the question we ask ourselves is, if death can terminate everything in this world, then is there anything in this world that can end this process of death? The scriptures, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very famous scripture in the Hindu culture, Vedic culture. Bhagavatam tells us that there is one personality who actually through his life showed us that it is possible. And how he did it and why he did it becomes the subject matter of this discussion. But lest you think that this presentation is about just one man, it is not so. It is about one man's example as a great devotee and personality, teaching us practical lessons in life. And that is what we are trying to learn. So bear with me as I go through this presentation, and I'll be very happy at the end of it. This should not take too long. To hear you, hear your realizations, hear your doubts, objections, violent or otherwise. But till then, let us try and understand who this great personality is. His name is known as Parikshit Maharaj. How many of you have heard Parikshit? Quick show of hands. Okay, that's nice. Not to worry. Parikshit Maharaj is a very glorious and great king. He is one of the recorded kings from the Pandava dynasty and the Kuru dynasty. He is actually so glorious, not because he became a saintly personality and lived all his life in renunciation, but rather because he lived a life like you and I. He worked, he had a normal life like every one of us. He was born and he also died. But in between that short span of time, he showed us many ways in which we can live peacefully and happily. So, Parikshit Maharaj, the story of Parikshit Maharaj will be appreciated if we actually start with a little bit of background to understand who he is. To understand and appreciate his great personality, we must understand one thing. Parikshit Maharaj was born right before, actually he was born after the great aftermath of the Mahabharata War. The Mahabharata War is a famous war in the Mahabharata scripture. And there you find that there were two warring parties, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Kauravas were 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, but the Pandavas were only 5. But they were so powerful and they were much more exalted in behavior than the Kauravas, simply because of one reason, because they were devotees of the Lord. So they had good qualities. The time had come that when finally the Kauravas fought for every piece of land which did not belong to them, and the Pandavas had no choice but to exert their true right to become true kings. So there followed a great and powerful 18-day Mahabharata war. And the war was so great and so powerful that many lives were lost, as in all wars. But at the end of the war, the Pandavas won, and the Kauravas were totally decimated. The reason for the war is simple. The war was the arrangement of providence and the Lord so that irreligion could be replaced by religion. If the Kauravas had continued to rule, then our scriptures tell us that they would have brought a lifetime of injustice and immorality into the kingdom. But as it turns out, by the Lord's mercy, the Pandavas emerged victorious. But it is very important to remember that despite the fact that they emerged victorious, they were not happy with their victory. Why? Why were they not happy with it? For the simple reason that even though they had won, it was not victory that they were seeking. They were devotees, and because they were devotees, they did not like the fact that they had to commit so many difficult and terrible decisions to take lives of others. But they took it as a duty because they were kings, and it was part of their duty to uphold justice. But once the Mahabharata war finished, you find that the Pandavas came to the battlefield and they found that millions and millions of soldiers had died. And because the Pandavas and Kauravas were actually cousins, therefore the Pandavas felt just as much loss as did the Kauravas. The Pandavas were also compassionate people. They did not want to kill. But have you been in situations in your life when you have to make decisions that may, even though meet its objective, still prove to be costly? That was the decision that the Pandavas had to make. And at the end of it, all the losses on both sides were terrible. But despite all that, there was one tragedy that was about to come, and that was going to make things very difficult for the Pandavas to start the reign of prosperity. And the scriptures tell us that the Pandavas were about to ascend the throne when one of the last few surviving members of the Kaurava dynasty, and his name is Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama is a Kaurava warrior, and he was loyal to Duryodhana, the villain, so to speak. At that point in the Mahabharata war, we find that Ashwatthama has become so sad that the Kauravas had lost to the Pandavas, but he becomes so filled with envy and hatred and revenge that what does he do? He seeks out the final descendants of the Pandava dynasty. And they happen to be the 5 sons of Draupadi. Draupadi is the wife of the Pandavas. And she had 5 very young boys. And when they were asleep in the tent after the battle, Ashwatthama comes into the tent and he raises his sword and beheads all 5 children in their sleep. And even by all codes of conduct that you find in the warrior caste, that was also considered, it was considered heinous. It was considered immoral that a man can strike an unarmed man. What more to speak of a woman or a child? In this case, the 5 sons of Draupadi died. And when they died, Ashwatthama was so happy that he thought that he had killed off the entire descendants of the Pandava dynasty, that he thought that he had actually emerged victorious. But then news came to him that there was still one last descendant of this Pandava dynasty left, and he was not yet born, and he was in the womb of Uttara. And Uttara is a great personality in Mahabharata. Her husband is Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu is actually the son of, anyone knows? Arjuna. So Arjuna's grandson was in the womb of his daughter-in-law, Uttara. Abhimanyu was killed mercilessly by the Kauravas to such an extent that he was actually surrounded by great generals, and he was finally killed in a manner which was unchivalrous. But after his death, the Pandava dynasty did not have time to mourn, because as soon as Ashwatthama hears that actually there is one last descendant, what does he do? He dispatches a great weapon known as the Brahmastra weapon. In Vedic science, the Brahmastra weapon is known to be the equivalent of a nuclear weapon. Except that Shastras tell us it is even more accurate. Whereas in today's arsenal of modern equipment, the nuclear weapons are meant to search and destroy not specific targets, but targets in a radius of a few miles, which is considered by human terms to be specific. But in those days, the Vedic culture tells us that when Ashwatthama released the Brahmastra weapon, it was so powerful that it went only to seek out that which was supposed to be destroyed. And in this case, the Ashwatthama's Brahmastra weapon was going towards Uttara. And it was going to near Uttara Mata, and it goes towards her womb. And at that point of time, we find that Uttara is now in difficulty. She sees, imagine the scene of Uttara, and that she's in so much difficulty that she is hurrying towards none other than Lord Krishna. Why? Because simultaneously, as the Brahmastra weapon was coming to kill the child in the womb of Uttara, Lord Krishna, who was the good friend, well-wisher, and the Supreme Lord, and the great well-wisher of the Pandavas, after finishing and winding up the Mahabharata war, Krishna was getting ready to depart for Dwarka. And as he is getting ready to leave, because his work is done, so to speak, at that point, he sees Uttara, who is a great devotee of the Lord, running towards him in great fear. Great fear. And as she runs to him in great fear, what does she do? She sings a very beautiful prayer. And this prayer is very nice in Bhagavatam, because this prayer tells us how when we are in difficulty, we can only seek the shelter and the protection of that great, great Supreme Lord. Pahi pahi mahayogin Deva Deva Jagatpate Nanyam Tvat Abhayam Pashe Yatra Mrityu Parasparam. And the meaning is very nice. Pahi Pahi Mahayogin. Uttara Mata cries feelingly to Krishna. In the same way that we saw the great devotee Srinivas today feelingly praying to Krishna. And in the same way, Uttara Mata prayed very feelingly to Krishna. She had no one to protect her. A child in her womb, when a mother has child in the womb, the mother naturally becomes protected. Is it not so? Just imagine when the mother knows that something is going to hurt the child in the womb, how much more desperate does the mother come? That was the state of desperation. So at that point of time, Uttara Mata says, Lord of Lords, you are the Lord of the universe. There is no one else who can protect me from the clutches of death in this world of life. So this is our first meeting with death in this presentation. That this child was about to meet death. And her mother, his mother prays very hard that Krishna, you please save this child. Krishna, what does he do? At that point of time, as the Brahmastra comes, while Krishna is hearing the prayer, Bhagavatam tells us the Pandavas, the husbands of Draupadi, and the uncles of who is going to be born, what do? They immediately arm themselves with weapons. And they are ready at that point of time to try and counteract the Brahmastra weapon. They were very powerful. They could have done that. But they were missing one small ingredient. They had no time. The Brahmastra weapon was coming very fast. And it was not possible for them to stop it in time. Uttara is left standing there. The weapon has been released. It is irresistible. It cannot be counteracted. It cannot be checked. Not by anyone in this universe, Bhagavatam tells us. And at that point of time, when everyone has become too late to save an innocent child, Lord Krishna hears the prayer of his devotee Uttara. And then what does he do? He then decides that I must summon my weapon. Lord Krishna has a very powerful weapon known as Sudarshana Chakra. It's like a disc, And whenever he dispatches it, great demons who oppose religious principles in this world, they are vanquished. So, Krishna immediately summons his Sudarshana Chakra outwardly, because he is in front of all the Pandavas and Uttara, and the baby in the womb is now in trouble. But at the same time, when he summons the Sudarshana Chakra, Bhagavatam tells us, Krishna does something else wonderful. He simultaneously enters into the womb of the mother of this unborn child. And as he enters the womb, it's a nice picture actually. As he enters into the womb of Uttara, he covers the embryo where this unborn child is. He covers it with his own personal protection, his own personal energy. And at that point of time, as the Brahmastra comes, it really, literally destroys the womb of Uttara. Uttara herself is in so much difficulty, but her prayer is that of a prayer of a genuine mother. She prays after this prayer that, my dear Lord, a terrible weapon is coming to kill my unborn child. Please, you protect him. It doesn't matter what comes of me. Mothers are never afraid to protect children. Those of you who are mothers, you know that better than us. So, the mother's nature of a devotee and a loving mother, they attract the Lord's mercy. And Krishna ensures that outwardly he protects and inwardly he protects. And at that point of time, no matter how powerful the Brahmastra weapon is, it becomes foiled by the strength of the great Lord. Who is this great child? This great child is none other than Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj's story is very interesting because it begins even before he is born. Most of our stories actually begin when we are born, isn't it? I think all of us begin our recorded history, at least in this world, from the day we are born. But in Parikshit Maharaj's case, he is unique because he has a story before he is born. Of course, your mothers and fathers will tell you a lot of stories of how before you were born, you were giving them so many kicks and so much of harassment and this and that. But all this is derived from the greatness of the story of Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj was saved even before he was born from death. And yet, surprisingly, death only begins after one is born. So death is very powerful. It can even destroy the conception of a child in the womb. But in this case, the Lord protected Parikshit Maharaj. And Bhagavatam tells us, Parikshit Maharaj was born in such a manner because of only one reason. Because he is considered a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted to have special affection and protection for Parikshit Maharaj even before he was born. Because first, Parikshit Maharaj was the last in the line of great devotees. Second, Parikshit Maharaj was already a devotee when he was conceived by his mother. Is that possible? Have you all, I remember when my wife was expecting, many doctors told us that we should get these CDs and play soft, sweet music to your baby while he or she is in the womb so that they become calm, they become non-agitated. Studies even today have shown that the state of the mother's consciousness is very often reflected in the mood of the child when he or she is in the womb. I remember when my wife would get a bit upset with something, she would feel the kicks of our son in the womb. And when she was quiet and peaceful, in his case there were also kicks, I remember. He was quite agitated all the time. But the fact is, there is life even when the child is growing in the womb. And while we cannot see that growth, medical science has established that there is life. And today, it is established practice that the consciousness of the mother is encouraged to be calm because it affects the consciousness of the child. Uttara was a great devotee of Krishna. Abhimanyu, his father, was a great devotee of Krishna. The Pandavas were all exalted devotees of the Lord. When they were together in the presence of Uttara when she was conceiving and carrying Parikshit Maharaj, they only discussed Krishna. They would only glorify the Lord. So all this was heard by the great child Parikshit, even before his birth. So Krishna protected him because he was a devotee even before he was born. And Krishna knew that he would grow up to be an exemplary personality, so that all of us today can learn something from him and hopefully take something back that will add value to our lives. This is the reason why Parikshit Maharaj was given the chance to see Krishna in the womb. Bhagavatam tells us at the point when the heat of the Brahmastra came, Krishna enters the womb. And when he enters the child at that point of time, Parikshit, he takes darshan. He actually sees the Supreme Lord. And when he sees him just for a flickering moment, he becomes completely attracted to Krishna. But then the moment the Brahmastra is released, Krishna leaves the womb. And at that point of time, Parikshit Maharaj later is born. And he is known now as Parikshit. And the name Parikshit is very nice. Why? Because the name Parikshit means one who is an examiner. An examiner. Parikshit means to examine. But Parikshit Maharaj's life was not meant to examine other people. When we conduct examinations on others in our lives, we tend to be critical of them. Isn't it so? Whenever we examine people, what do we examine most? We examine their faults. Sometimes we sit through a lecture and what are we thinking of? We're thinking of how do we shoot him down. Hope we won't do that with him. But anyway, that's how we think. When we approach someone, when we meet somebody, what do we do? We assess the person. We measure them up. And based on that, we decide who they are. So Parikshit Maharaj was not an examiner of other people. he was an examiner of his heart. Not only did he examine his heart as he grew up to see how he could become a better devotee, but more importantly, he was always examining every situation in life, every experience in life, to try and see if he could find again that Supreme Lord Krishna. Where is Krishna? Can I see him again? Will I experience him again? This is how Parikshit Maharaj led his whole life. This verse that I put down in the slide that you see now is very interesting for us, because Krishna, at the point when he comes to save Parikshit Maharaj, had actually made a vow in Mahabharata not to take up any arms. He was supposed to be the neutral party, the Switzerland of the war, so to speak. So he was not supposed to take up any arms. And he's a good Lord. He should not break his vow. But the Lord in this case is so kind to his devotee that he's prepared even to break his vow, so to speak, so that he can protect his devotee. And Prabhupada, who writes the purport of this Bhagavatam, tells us that the Lord prefers to be a friend of the devotees rather than to look like a worldly moralist who wants to maintain a solemn vow. This is the greatness of the Lord, and how much he is prepared to sacrifice and reciprocate with his devotees. So Parikshit Maharaj was saved to live when he was doomed to die. That is the greatness of his beginning. And when he was born, Bhagavatam tells us, normally when we are born, what do? In most Vedic cultures, our parents go and consult astrologers. Then the astrologers will say, okay, fortune favors him, he's going to have good times, he's going to have bad times, and this is what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. But in Parikshit Maharaj's case, Bhagavatam tells us he was so glorious that when he was born, all the other influences of all other planets, they lined themselves up purposefully to ensure that they would be all in an auspicious line to receive Parikshit Maharaj. Just the opposite. If only we could do that, we'll all be lucky people all our lives. But that doesn't happen to 90% of us. But it happened to Parikshit Maharaj. All astrologers and great rishis and sages, they came and they all blessed him. They said that he would be as great as Lord Ram. They said that he would be as patient as Bali Maharaj. They said that he would be as staunch a devotee as the great Prahlad Maharaj. All these were great devotees. And finally they said that he would be as generous as another great king devotee known as Ranki. So in all these, Parikshit Maharaj had no end to blessings in his life. And as he grew up, Parikshit Maharaj's life was defined, Bhagavatam tells us, by his impression of that incident that took place just before he was born. At that fleeting moment when he had a glimpse of the Lord in the womb of his mother. And so he lived all his life always contemplating, always remembering, and always being grateful. So Parikshit Maharaj was a king of the world, and notwithstanding the fact that he was a king, he discharged all his duties perfectly. And at the same time, he never forgot that he was always part and parcel of the Lord, and that constitutionally his eternal duty was to render devotional service to the Lord. In that way he grew up, and you won't find it in the slide, but it is stated in Bhagavatam, as Parikshit Maharaj grew up, he would play with toys. But all the toys were dolls of Krishna and all the other characters of the Mahabharata book, all the great personalities of the devotees. And while playing dolls with dolls that reminded him of the Lord and the other devotees, Parikshit Maharaj was constantly absorbed in Krishna, constantly absorbed in spiritual life. And as he grew up there, he became known as Parikshit, because he was always alert to look out, where is the Lord, where is his hand, how can I see him in this situation, how do I see him in that situation. That was how he lived his life. Now we come to another point of Parikshit Maharaj's life. By the time Parikshit Maharaj was growing older, Lord Krishna had decided that he would leave this mortal world. He was winding up his pastimes and going back to his eternal abode. And after he left, the Pandavas, who were by now much older, so to speak, they decided that Parikshit Maharaj had become such a great devotee that we can leave him to become king. So Parikshit Maharaj takes over the ruling of the entire Pandava dynasty, and he becomes a noble and great king. Bhagavatam tells us he is so powerful that when he ruled this earth, he performed great sacrifices for the benefit of mankind. And at that same time, it was so easy for man living in such an exalted kingdom that they could even the common man could just walk with all the denizens of all the other higher planets. In these days it is considered impossible, but in the days of Parikshit Maharaj, it was that exalted. So Parikshit Maharaj survived a difficult time when he was born, or before he was born. Now he becomes a great king, but now another part of his life comes into being. And this is the difficult and challenging part. Why? Because after Krishna leaves, Bhagavatam tells us that symptoms of a new age has started appearing during the reign of Parikshit Maharaj. Our Vedic culture tells us that the cycle of life is actually projected into 4 yugas. In the first yuga, people who are born in that time were considered to be extremely pious and extremely devoted. In the next yuga, they become less pious. In the third yuga, they become less pious. And by the time the 4th and the final yuga comes, they have practically forgotten the meaning of what it means to be pious. If you say that you're going to temple and that you are religious in today's world, you are considered more like a fossil than something which is current. Today, it has become more impossible to appreciate spiritual values. And when someone speaks about it, very often he is more an exception than the norm. So, this age, this time that we are living, is known in Shastras as the age of Kali. Kali-yuga. This is the age of iron and hypocrisy. It is the age of quarrel. And when Parikshit Maharaj started ruling the kingdom after Krishna left, Bhagavatam tells us that Kali came in the form of a personality, personified. And Parikshit Maharaj started hearing that, I have heard that somewhere this great personality, Kali, is moving around my kingdom. Because previous to the time when Kali was there, Parikshit Maharaj's kingdom knew no problems. Everyone was peaceful, there was no difficulties, there were no miseries. It was utopian, so to speak. But now today where we live, we know it is anything but that. That process of deterioration began when Kali stepped into the kingdom of the great king Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj now decided, let me find and locate this great personality Kali, because he is dangerous, and if he is allowed to stay in my kingdom, then he will bring all the bad habits and he will bring all the disturbances into the lives of my subjects. The question we may ask now is, what are the symptoms of Kali? Our scriptures tell us that these are the symptoms of Kali. Wherever you see the symptoms that you are reading right now, there Kali is staying. The symptoms are not difficult to understand. We've all seen them around us, up, down, everywhere. Bhagavatam tells us where there is illicit connection with women, Kali is there. Bhagavatam tells us where there is indulgence in meat eating, Kali is present. Bhagavatam tells us where we take pleasure in gambling, Kali is present. And Bhagavatam tells us where there is occasion for intoxication, Kali is present. Then, wherever Kali is present, something has got to give. So our scriptures tell us where you have these 4 symptoms, you will find 4 values of society decreasing. Think about it, take it back with you, contemplate. The first value that will go down is the value of cleanliness and purity. Where there is illicit connection with women and vice versa with men, there will be the degradation of purity, chastity, loyalty of relationships, and that's how cleanliness goes. The second pillar is the pillar of mercy. And scriptures tell us where there is indulgence in meat eating, the mercy aspect will be affected. The third point, wherever there is pleasure in gambling, speculation, then the habit of truthfulness must deteriorate. And last but not least, wherever there is intoxication, then Bhagavatam tells us the ability to be austere and disciplined slowly vanishes. So actually all four pillars that you see at the bottom, they correspond directly with all four habits that you see at the top. And Kali was carrying all these four habits with him, and he had entered into the kingdom of Parikshit Maharaj. Another symptom of Kali that is very nice, and I like this verse because it describes us so much in this day and age. Bhagavatam tells us very nicely, in today's world, in this iron age, so to speak, men, what happens to us? We all have short lives. Short lives meaning that even though our mortality rates may be going up, you may not necessarily correspond with the value of happiness and peace that we have with us. Second, Bhagavatam tells us this age is full of quarrel. If you can sit down with someone just for a while and not have a disagreement, you're considered very, very nice as a person. If you can live your life without any quarrels, it will be a dream. But today you know and I know that in our lives, even when we don't want to quarrel with someone, people still end up quarreling with us. And this is the age of quarrel. Quarrel leads to misunderstanding. Misunderstanding begins. Bhagavatam tells us this is the age when we are all lazy. Not lazy to work. I guarantee you're all hardworking. But we are lazy to understand the true purpose of life. We're lazy to understand why are we here, where will we go, and what will happen to us after we leave. Bhagavatam tells us that in this age we are misguided because we think that we have the right objective in life. And what is our objective in life? All of you have the same objective in life, and that is to be happy. If anyone disagrees with me, please raise your hands. You may all approach your near objectives, your 5-year plan objectives, your 10-year plan objectives in different fashions. What is happiness for you may be different in terms for me. But the fact is, everyone is living their lives hoping to be happy. You've come into this lecture theatre hoping that I'll make you happy, or you'll be happy, or you'll be peaceful. And the reason why this is so is because that is actually our right. We all have a right to be happy. Bhagavatam tells us only 2 kinds of people don't want to be happy in this world. One is a dead man, because he can't be happy when he's dead. And the other is a madman, because only a madman will tell you that I want to be depressed all my life. So everyone wants happiness, but we are misguided because we don't realize how we can achieve happiness, which is a little bit longer lasting than the temporary happiness you and I are having right now. And last but not least, because of all these reasons, Bhagavatam tells us we are considered unlucky. Very often everyone thinks that somebody else is luckier than I am. Whenever we see other people's fortunes, we always say, how I wish I could be like him or her. But very seldom do we look at ourselves and we are grateful that, thank you for placing me in this situation, because I am still grateful for what I have. Very often, we always feel unlucky. Everyone, it has become fashion nowadays to discuss. And when we talk to each other, very often we want to tell each other, or we try to outdo each other in telling each other how much I have suffered in my life compared to you. And sometimes when we look at someone and we hear somebody's sad story, so to speak, we think to ourselves, if only you knew how much I have suffered. If you think your life is bad, wait till you hear mine. And after a while it becomes so ridiculous that we are just fighting to see who has suffered most. And yet, we are all searching for happiness. It's an amazing contradiction, which is really unfortunate. And if you put all this together, ladies and gentlemen, what you have at the end? We are always disturbed. Always disturbed. We wake up every morning hoping today will be a better day than the other day. But you and I know, you don't have to tell me that, at some point or another, disturbance is bound to come. Nobody can escape it. If the disturbance doesn't come from your good friend, and you become more hurt because of that, your disturbance comes from your lecturer, your disturbance comes from yourself. Maybe someone who is a good friend of yours keeps smiling at you every day, and on a bad day when he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, he forgets to greet you. As you pass by him, what happens? He doesn't smile at you, you smile at him. You come for lecture thinking, what happened? Did I say something wrong? Today he's not very nice to me. He's talking to everybody else. How often have we been in a lecture or in a group of study students where we find ourselves being grouped? We walk in and we find, this is the glamorous group there. They all sit down, they talk to each other, they have this very elitist attitude, and whenever they see me, I swear to you, they look down on me. They may not even see you. But then in your head you are thinking, I'm not up to the mark. And these people always talk to me, today they didn't smile at me. How many times have you gone for a wedding and felt underdressed and become depressed? How many times have you gone to a wedding and looked at other people being overdressed and become depressed? It happens. There isn't a time in your life when you'll not be disturbed. I know of mothers, mothers. I remember my wife, for example. For so many years we waited for a child, no child came, and that was very bad. We were disturbed. When the child came and it was in the womb, we were also disturbed. Would it be alright? Would it be okay? When the child was born, we were disturbed. Would he be healthy? Would it be alright? Now he's going to primary school, we are disturbed. Is he doing his homework? Is he going to be alright? Can he cope? And like that, the elders will tell you, till the end of your life, you will be disturbed. This is Kali-yuga. Welcome to the real world. This is Kali-yuga. And this is the yuga that actually that Parikshit Maharaj had to face. So now what happens? Parikshit Maharaj sets out to face Kali. He wanders around the earth and he comes across a very strange scene which he has never seen before in his reign of prosperity. What does he see? He sees a man dressed like a king. Dressed like a king. Looking noble, looking exalted. And what does he do? This man is doing the most unexalted behavior. He's performing a terrible act. With a club in his hand, the man is mercilessly beating the legs of a bull and a cow. Mercilessly. Just beating them. And as he's beating the legs of the cow and the bull, Parikshit Maharaj looks closer and he finds that the bull had already lost 3 of its legs. Only standing on 1 leg, barely at that. And all 3 legs are almost gone. And the cow was crying and crying. And the bull was so fearful of this personality who appeared and pretended to be a king, that what did he do? He was urinating and he was trembling. The cow was rendered poor and she was without calf. And Bhagavatam tells us she was beaten, tears in her eyes, distressed and weeping. This was a terrible scene for a devotee of the Lord to come across. Terrible scene. So Parikshit Maharaj now comes down, and Bhagavatam tells us immediately he comes and confronts this personality. And he says, who are you? You appear to be strong, and yet you dare to kill. Within my protection, in my kingdom, those who are helpless. Then he says, by your dress, you pose yourself as a godly man, but by your deeds, you are opposing the principles of religion. That is something we should take back with us. What is the point of me wearing dhoti, nice kurta, and nice tilak, looking like a devotee, if I walk out of this lecture theatre and I display character which is totally opposite to everything that I have spoken?